Eleanor Bishop woke up to sunlight streaming through the lace curtains of her childhood bedroom. The morning of her wedding day had arrived at last. Her heart thudded with a mix of excitement and nerves as she stretched and looked at the soft blue bridesmaid dress draped over the chair by her bedside. Her sister, Claire, had ironed it the night before to perfection. Ellie glanced at her phone, half expecting a sweet good morning text from Matthew, her fiancé. Instead, the screen displayed nothing but the time, 7:15 a.m. Odd. Matthew never missed a chance to check in. They'd agreed he'd leave his phone off until after the ceremony to avoid any mishaps, but it still struck her as strange. As she swung her legs out of bed, Ellie felt a sense of unease she couldn't explain. The house was bustling with activity, her mom yelling at Claire to hurry, the hum of the caterers outside setting up tables. But something felt off. Brushing it aside as pre-wedding jitters, Ellie padded to the window and took in the sight of the backyard, already transformed into a dreamscape of fairy lights and pastel florals. By the time she made it downstairs, her mother, Margaret, was pouring coffee. Margaret turned, her smile faltering when she saw Ellie. "Are you all right, sweetheart? You look pale." "I didn't sleep well," Ellie admitted, brushing her hair behind her ear. "Matthew's been radio silent all morning, though. Did he call you or Dad?" Margaret's brows furrowed. "Matthew?" Ellie laughed nervously. "Mom, my fiancé. The guy I'm marrying in a few hours?" Margaret's expression hardened into something Ellie couldn't read. "Ellie, I don't know what you're talking about. There's no wedding today. And who's Matthew?" Ellie froze. Her mother was never one to make cruel jokes. "Mom, seriously, stop. Matthew Coleman? We've been engaged for a year? He proposed on the ski trip? What are you talking about?" Her mother set the coffee pot down, her movements slow and deliberate. "Ellie, are you feeling all right? You've never mentioned anyone named Matthew to me or your father. I think maybe you're under too much stress." "Stress?" Ellie's voice rose. "Mom, stop acting like this. Claire," she called out, spinning toward the hallway. "Claire, tell her. You've met Matthew 100 times. Claire appeared, hair half curled, and an exasperated look on her face. "What's going on? Ellie, what's with the yelling?" "Tell Mom she's losing her mind," Ellie demanded, grabbing Claire's arm. "Tell her about Matthew." Claire blinked. "Matthew? I don't know a Matthew." Ellie stepped back, her pulse racing. No. You're messing with me, both of you. Where's Dad? Let me talk to him." Her mother and sister exchanged worried glances. Claire placed a hand on Ellie's shoulder. "Ellie, breathe. Maybe you should sit down." Ellie yanked her arm free. She ran upstairs, heart pounding, and burst into her room. Her phone sat on the nightstand where she'd left it. She scrolled through her messages, looking for any evidence of Matthew. The countless texts they'd exchanged, the late-night talks, the pictures, the voice notes, were gone. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling. She opened her photo gallery, scrolling frantically. Matthew's face should have been everywhere. Their engagement photos, pictures of him cooking dinner in her apartment, selfies from their vacation to Italy last summer. But there was nothing. The photos were empty spaces, as if someone had deliberately erased him. Her wedding dress still hung in her closet, a pristine vision of ivory silk. But there were no shoes to match it, no jewelry laid out on the dresser. Everything was wrong. Ellie stumbled back into the hallway, her breaths short and shallow. "Dad," she called, running down to his study. Her father was seated at his desk, sorting through some documents. "Ellie, honey, what's wrong?" "Dad, where's Matthew?" Her father looked at her like she'd grown a second head. "Who's Matthew?" Tears streamed down Ellie's face as she crumpled onto the couch in the living room. "This isn't happening," she whispered to herself. "I'm not crazy. He's real. He's real." She clutched her engagement ring tightly, but even that looked strange now. The diamond band that had always sparkled on her finger seemed dull, lifeless. Ellie grabbed her laptop and opened her email. She typed Matthew's name into the search bar. Nothing. She typed wedding. No results. Her heart felt like it was in free fall. Then a thought struck her. Check the venue. She grabbed her car keys and ran out the door before anyone could stop her. The church was empty when Ellie arrived. The doors were unlocked, and the altar was bare. Her heels clicked against the tiled floor as she called out, "Hello? Is anyone here?" A figure emerged from the shadows of the pews. It was Pastor Graham, the man who was supposed to officiate the ceremony. "Ellie?" he said, his voice cautious. "What are you doing here?" "What do you mean, what am I doing here?" "It's my wedding day," she said, her voice shaking. "Where is everyone? Where's Matthew?" The pastor hesitated, his face creased with worry. "Ellie, there's no wedding today. I haven't seen you or spoken to you in months." Her stomach dropped. "That's not true. You met Matthew. You've been helping us plan the ceremony. We even sent you our vows." The pastor shook his head. "Ellie, I think you need to see someone. You've been through a lot. And through what?" Ellie interrupted, tears streaking her face. "Why does everyone keep acting like this? He's real. He exists. I'm not making this up." Before the pastor could reply, Ellie's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, desperate for some kind of sign that Matthew hadn't vanished entirely. The screen displayed an unknown number. Ellie hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" A deep, distorted voice spoke. "If you want the truth about Matthew, meet me at the old diner on Route 6, alone." The line went dead. Ellie's hands trembled as she stared at her phone, the mysterious call replaying in her mind. Who was that? How do they know about Matthew? Against her better judgment, she decided to go to the diner. The people around her, her family, her friends, were no longer allies. They couldn't be trusted. If someone had answers, she needed them. By the time she pulled onto Route 6, the sky was bruised with heavy gray clouds. The old diner loomed ahead, its flickering neon sign spelling Joe's, casting a strange red glow on the wet pavement. Ellie parked her car and sat for a moment, heart hammering in her chest. She glanced at the ring on her finger, turning it slowly. He's real. He has to be real. The bell above the door jingled as Ellie stepped inside. The diner was mostly empty, except for a man sitting in a corner booth. He wore a dark coat and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. Ellie approached cautiously, her heels clicking against the cracked tiles. "You called me," she said, her voice sharp. The man gestured for her to sit. His face was obscured, but she caught a glimpse of graying stubble on his jaw. "Eleanor Bishop," he said in a gravelly tone. "You came. Who are you? And what do you know about Matthew?" The man leaned forward, his face still hidden in the shadows. "I've been watching you, Ellie. You've been asking the wrong people for answers. Your family. They're not lying to you. They genuinely believe Matthew never existed." Ellie's fists clenched. "Why would they think that? He's real. I have photos, memories, our plans. "Do you?" the man interrupted, his voice low and menacing. "Do you really have those things? Or are they just fragments in your mind? Have you noticed them disappearing piece by piece?" Ellie's stomach dropped. The photos, the texts. Her voice faltered. "How do you know that?" The man finally tilted his head, just enough for her to see his eyes. Cold, piercing. "Because this isn't the first time this has happened. You're not the only one." Ellie's breath caught. "What do you mean? Happened to me before? What are you saying?" The man slid a folder across the table. She hesitated before opening it, her hands shaking. Inside were black and white photos of people she didn't recognize. A young couple laughing on a beach. A man proposing to a woman at a park. A wedding photo of two strangers. "These are other people who've lost someone the same way you're losing Matthew," the man explained. "One day, they're here, part of your life. The next day, it's like they never existed." Ellie stared at him, her head spinning. "How? Why? This doesn't make any sense." The man exhaled, leaning back. "It's a phenomenon I've been tracking for years. A pattern. People disappearing from memory, from records, from reality itself. I call them ghost lives. Once someone's erased, it's like they were never born. Family, friends, strangers, no one remembers them, except for one person." Ellie gripped the edge of the table. "Me. I remember Matthew." He nodded. "That's how it works. For some reason, one person is left behind with fragments of the truth. I don't know why. But if you want to save him, you'll have to act fast. The longer someone stays erased, the harder it is to bring them back." Ellie's mind raced. "How do I bring him back? Tell me." The man hesitated, then said, "There's a place, a facility, hidden from the public. It's where this all starts. People like Matthew are taken there. Their identities are wiped clean, their connections severed." "Where is it?" Ellie demanded. The man shook his head. "It's not that simple. They've gone to great lengths to keep it hidden. But there's a lead, a woman named Dr. Iris Kane. She's the key. Find her, and you'll find the truth." Ellie's pulse quickened. "Who is she? How do I find her?" The man slid another piece of paper across the table, this one with an address scribbled on it. "She worked at the facility until she disappeared off the grid. This is where she was last seen. Be careful. She doesn't want to be found, and the people who erased Matthew won't let you get far without a fight." Ellie grabbed the paper and stood. "Why are you helping me?" The man hesitated, then said, "Because I lost someone too, and I wasn't able to save her." Ellie's heart twisted. She wanted to ask more, but she could see the pain etched on his face. She turned and walked toward the door, but his voice stopped her. "Ellie," he called out, "once you go down this road, there's no turning back. The truth can be worse than forgetting." She didn't reply. Ellie drove to the address, her grip on the steering wheel tight. The location was a derelict building on the outskirts of town, its windows boarded up and its exterior covered in graffiti. She hesitated before stepping out of her car, glancing over her shoulder as if someone might be watching. The inside of the building smelled of mildew and abandonment. Ellie's footsteps echoed as she made her way through dimly lit hallways. She finally found a room with a single lamp casting a yellow glow on a cluttered desk. A woman sat there, her face gaunt and her eyes sharp. "You found me," the woman said, her voice edged with surprise. "Dr. Kane?" Ellie asked, her voice trembling. The woman's lips curled into a faint smirk. "So, they haven't erased you yet. You must be desperate to come here." Ellie stepped forward, her voice filled with determination. "I need to know how to bring Matthew back." At the mention of his name, Dr. Kane's expression darkened. "Matthew Coleman. I know the name. I know what happened to him." Ellie's breath hitched. "You do?" Dr. Kane leaned closer. "He's not just erased, Eleanor. He's being kept. And if you want to save him, you're going to have to make a choice. A choice that could cost you everything." Dr. Iris Kane's words hung heavy in the air. "He's being kept. And if you want to save him, you're going to have to make a choice. A choice that could cost you everything." Ellie's fists tightened, her voice trembling with desperation. "What choice? What do I have to do?" Dr. Kane sighed and leaned back in her chair. "You don't understand the scale of what you're dealing with. This isn't just about Matthew. The facility where they're keeping him, where they erase people from reality, it's part of something much larger. A project called Oblivion." "Oblivion?" Ellie whispered. Kane nodded grimly. "They experiment on people, testing the limits of human memory and existence itself. People like Matthew, like my son, are considered anomalies. They're removed because they don't fit the narrative." Ellie's heart clenched. "Your son?" Kane's expression hardened. "He was taken 5 years ago. I worked for them, Ellie. I helped build the system they use to erase people. I thought I was doing something noble, fixing reality's fractures. But when they took him, I realized the truth. They don't erase people to fix reality. They erase them because they're inconvenient." Ellie's mind spun with questions, but one stood out. "How do I stop them? How do I get Matthew back?" Dr. Kane leaned forward. "The only way to retrieve someone from oblivion is to replace them. If you want Matthew back, you'll have to take his place." Ellie froze, her breath caught in her throat. What happens if I take his place?" "You'll be erased," Kane said softly. "Completely. No one will remember you. Not your family, not your friends. It'll be as if you never existed. The memories of you will vanish. Matthew will return, but at the cost of your own reality." Ellie's world seemed to collapse around her. She thought of her parents, her sister, her life. Would they forget her laugh, her smile, the way she loved them? Could she live with that? No, die with that, just to bring Matthew back? Kane reached out, placing a hand on Ellie's shoulder. "You don't have to do this. You can let him go. You can walk away and live your life. But if you go through with it, I can guide you to the facility. I can help you get inside. The rest is up to you." The facility Ellie made her decision. The next day, armed with directions and fake credentials provided by Kane, she drove to a nondescript industrial complex on the outskirts of the city. The building was cold and sterile, its towering gray walls casting long shadows over the barren landscape. Kane had warned her about the guards and the surveillance, but Ellie moved with determination. She bypassed checkpoints and slipped into the facility through a service entrance. The inside was a labyrinth of sterile hallways and locked doors. Finally, Ellie found herself in a room filled with monitors. Each screen displayed someone's life, memories playing like old home videos. She scanned the screens frantically until she saw him. Matthew. He was sitting in a white room, staring blankly at the wall. His eyes, once filled with warmth and life, were hollow. Ellie's throat tightened. "I'm here, Matthew. I'm going to bring you home," she whispered. She located a control panel labeled Subject 017, Matthew Coleman. Beside it was a chair with a complex headset. Kane had explained this part. Once she activated the system, it would transfer Matthew back into the world, but only if she sat in the chair, erasing herself in his place. Her hands hovered over the controls. Was she really ready to disappear? To be forgotten? She closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. Memories of Matthew flooded her mind. His laugh, his touch, the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the world. She took a deep breath and pressed the button. Ellie woke up in a void. There was no sound, no light, no sensation. She tried to move, but there was nothing to move in. She wasn't sure if she even had a body anymore. Her mind buzzed with disjointed thoughts. Was it worth it? Did Matthew make it back? Suddenly she felt a presence, a faint warmth that grew stronger. A voice whispered through the void, soft and familiar. Ellie? Her heart leapt. Matthew? I remember, he said. I remember everything. You saved me. Ellie's chest swelled with relief. Even in the emptiness, she felt his love, his gratitude. That's all I wanted, she said, her voice breaking. For you to live, to be happy. Matthew's presence began to fade. I'll never forget you, Ellie. Not ever. As he vanished, Ellie smiled through her tears. That's enough. Matthew woke up in the middle of the church, surrounded by confused but joyful guests. He was holding a ring in his hand, though he couldn't quite remember why. Matthew, Margaret, Ellie's mother, approached him cautiously. Are you okay? Matthew blinked, his heart aching. There was someone he was supposed to find, someone important. But the harder he tried to remember, the further the thought slipped away. Still, a single tear fell down his cheek as he whispered, Ellie. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through the Forgotten Bride. What would you do in Ellie's place? Would you sacrifice everything for someone you love? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Stories of Brilliance. We've got more gripping tales, twists, and turns coming your way. Also, tell us where you're watching from. Are you tuning in from New York, London, or a small town somewhere across the globe? Drop your location in the comments, and let's see how far this story has reached. Until next time, stay brilliant and keep the stories alive.